All right, let's get our other Facebook groups in here before it's officially time to start the show. We got the wheels spinning. 1 and 2. All right, welcome in, welcome in, welcome in. It is Tuesday morning, the 5th of December, and it's time for an episode of Broncos for Breakfast. I am Nick Kendell and joined by, as always, on these morning shows, Scott Kennedy. Scott, how you doing? What's new? Happy Tuesday to you. What's going on?
I'm doing good. I've already been to the annual doctor's appointment this morning, so I've been poked, jabbed, drained, all kinds of stuff. So I'm ready to go now. And I swear, every time you say start the show, I want to sing the Muppets.
I know, right?
Every single time, I want to sing the Muppets.
I mean, I don't think I'd stop you. Every time I think of the Muppets show, I think of my personal favorite movie of all time, Forgetting Sarah Marshall with Jason Segel, and he's
I
just
love that
drunk and
movie. Yeah.
God, it's so good. Just drunk playing the Muppets theme and just crying on the piano. But what a good movie. But appreciate everyone coming in. Let's say hello to some folks in the chat as we open it up here. We got Dominique saying, "Hey guys, mile high salute to my Broncos family. I'm still confident in my Broncos. MHH for life, Broncos for life." We got David Youngkin coming in here saying, "Morning, everybody. After a tough loss, it's so easy to start the blame game. We started off 1-5, and everyone else wrote us off, and now we have a slight chance to finish strong." David, this is an excellent point and something that I think is, Scott, I kind of have a process where during the games themselves, I'm a different person and I am emotional and try to ride that wave and just have fun with it, firing at the hip a little bit sometimes on Twitter during the actual games. And then as soon as it's over, it's like a flip switches and it's like, okay, rational data, not too high, not too low. So I apologize for anything during the games. Something like Alex Singleton, I was really mad at him when he did that penalty and kind of got baited by the quarterback into that. I'm like, oh man, what a foolish play. You can't do that in that situation. Take away his game check. I do think it was foolish, but don't take away his game check. I mean, things happen sometimes in the NFL. But I agree. This is great perspective here, David. The Broncos started off horribly, and now we have a chance for meaningful football in December, which if you go back to before the season when the Broncos brought in Payton, that's all I think Scott and I really wanted. Let's play meaningful games down the stretch. If we get in the playoffs, great. If not, that means you're building towards something. Good perspective, David.
Right. And we talked a lot. At 1-4, I was done with this team. I was like, just burn it all down. There's a systematic rot inside of these Denver Broncos, and if you've been there longer than 3 years, you got to go. That's how I felt after week 5.
Mm-hmm.
Losing to that Jets game and just watching the undisciplined football. The same mistakes, the lack of impetus, and that all turned around. That all changed. So we've talked for years. When do you hit bottom, and we know when you've hit bottom, but when does the arrow start going in the right direction? It's definitely headed in the right direction. There's no doubt in my mind. And David, just a slight tweak on the words there. You've got an excellent chance to finish strong. Excellent, especially after a 1-5 start.
Yeah.
You've got a chance to make the playoffs, but you've got an excellent chance to finish this season strong.
Yeah. Yeah, man. It's a pretty easy schedule down the stretch here. Now, granted, it's the damn NFL, right? And anything can happen any week. We just saw Jake Browning and the Bengals take down the number 1 AFC South Jags, who would have been number 1 in the AFC if they had won that game, I believe. So
in Jacksonville.
In Jacksonville. Yeah, that's quite an upset there. Shout out to Jake Browning, former UW Washington quarterback there. We'll see how they do against Texas coming up here. But yeah, anything can happen in the NFL. That's one reason that Texans game was so big, because it would have given you a little margin for error. Like you probably could have gone 3-2 over the final 5 games and still made the playoffs. Now you have to go 4-1, maybe 5-0. We'll get into some of the stuff. I found a tweet from Zach Seegers, who does good work covering the Broncos, and some data as far as the Broncos' probability of making the playoffs based on outcomes. So we'll get into that. Miguel Santa-Steven, though. First, we got to say hello to the money man, Miguel. Good to see you. Happy Tuesday morning. Thanks for the super chat. He says, "Morning, fellas. Can't stay. Just wanted to show some love. MHH. Thank you so much, Miguel. We appreciate you. Hope you're doing well. Hopefully, you'll circle back and listen after the fact, wherever everyone listens, after the fact. I listen to a lot of podcasts, so I'm not involved in the live streams because I, walk 4 miles a day with the dog. So I know a lot of people do that. And we got David also says, "Well, damn, Scott, I thought I was on the right track."
Definitely on the right track. Like I said, just a little nuance in the language terms for me. That's all. You're definitely on the right track.
Yes.
But for me, I think, like I said, it's got a slight chance of finishing strong. No. You've got a great chance of finishing this season strong. If you finish Well, you've won 5 of your last 6 games. You got 5 left now. Is that where we are?
Yep.
You will go 3-2 and you win 8 of your last 11 games. Dude, that's a strong finish. Even if you make the playoffs or not, that's a hell of a finish. That is a really, especially after a 1-5 start, for goodness sake. So yeah, Broncos are heading in the right direction. There's no doubt in my mind. Nakey Dragon asks, he goes, do you guys seriously think this team can win in the playoffs? Yes, I do. You've beat the Kansas City Chiefs. You've beat the Buffalo Bills. I absolutely think this team can win in the playoffs. Would they be favored? No. But do I think they can win? Yes. I don't think this is a 1 and out. Let's just get in and you're going to get wiped out by whatever first round team you play. This is a team that no one's going to want to face in the playoffs, especially if you're on the type of streak it's going to take to get you into the playoffs. 11-6 gets you in, 10-7, you need some help. What's that, 4-1 or 5-0? You finish 5-0. Who's going to want to play the Denver Broncos team that's won 9 of their last 10 games, 10 of their last 11 games?
Yeah, especially a team that, at least during the winning streak, the offensive line looked like it was coming together. Yes, they were bad versus Houston overall, one of their worst games since probably the first 5 weeks of the season. And the turnover stuff, we'll see how that plays out over time with a larger sample size. But Broncos get in. That means they were hot, and they're a physical team that is overall well coached, and you have the weirdness factor that is Russell Wilson, right? It's like Broncos are getting their butt kicked in the first half. I mean, the fact that it was 13-3 is a miracle because the Broncos were so thoroughly outplayed in the first half versus Houston. I guess shout out to the red zone defense and getting strong down there and not giving up points, but you were horrible in the first half. I think he had one drive that got a first down. I mean, it was just not good. But overall, would be a feisty team, assuming you finish 4-1, 5-0 down the stretch. We will see. It's hard in the NFL. You can look at the schedule like, oh, we can win every game. Well, you could probably lose every game as well, given you're living by the sword and dying by the sword. That is the turnover battle and the high volatility that goes with that. Michael Ronquillo coming in. Good morning, Michael. Thank you so much to see. He says, Nick and Scott on good morning, Nick and Scott on Broncos for breakfast. Go Broncos. Go Michael. Thank you so much for the super chat superstars over on Facebook. We always appreciate Michael coming in and saying hello. We also got a few more coming in here. I see we got our guy Troy Boer in the house saying, hey guys, have not been watching the Chargers. Their record is awful, but the team is in disarray like their record indicates. Where are they weak? Have a great show. The Chargers are absolutely horrible in every aspect that has to do with the run game. They are one of the worst running offenses in the NFL, and they are dreadful against the run. They are just, despite investing pretty well in the offensive line, they can't get a push. They don't really have a back that makes sense kind of with the wider boxes today. You got Eckler, who's a good receiving back, but he's older. He's had injuries, and they don't really have a physicality to them. They're super, super finesse on offense and defense. You see games where they're going up against a more power run-oriented offensive line, and they're getting just, forklifted there. So that's a big weakness for them. I think another issue is that they've made a lot of bets in the draft, and they have not hit on those bets. I mean, Kenneth Murray, this is why I'm always a little bit skeptical about drafting the pure athlete at linebacker first round. That's not a pass rushing oriented guy. Kenneth Murray, great athlete, but out of play as much as he is in the right gap. Easy to exploit because of that. Quentin Johnson looks like a horrible pick for them at wide receiver at TCU. Utilized in an area that I don't think makes sense for him, but that's what happens when Mike Williams goes down with injury. Just a very top-heavy team. I almost feel bad for Justin Herbert because he's playing pretty good football overall. Really talented. Like, if I hate to do this, Scott, but like if you flipped Justin Herbert and Russell Wilson right now, what would the records be of these teams?
I think I don't think you would have gone 1-5. So
No.
I would say 2 more. So 6-6. So 8-4.
8-4. I would have said 8-4 as well. Maybe 2.5 is about what I would put it at.
8-4.
Yeah. But you also have amazing plays by Russell Wilson that maybe you don't get as well. So it'd probably normalize somewhat.
Yeah, and the defense was so bad at the beginning that I'm not sure
Anybody
the offense wasn't necessarily the problem when you weren't stopping anybody in the first 6 weeks.
Yeah, it's true. But Herbert's playing good ball. I would say he's playing better than Russell Wilson. But the Broncos are a much more cohesive team and so much better at the lines of scrimmage. It's night and day. So Brandon Staley, dead man walking, whatever you want to say. I mean, beating the Patriots 6-0 is kind of comical.
Nick, I watched the first half of that game yesterday.
Yeah, man, you got treated to some real offensive outputs this week.
To answer Troy's question, and this is going to warm your hearts, Broncos fans, I'm gonna simplify what Nick said. The Chargers defense is weak up the gut. And where are the Broncos really good? Running the ball, guard tackle, right there, right side,
Duo.
right up the middle with a hammer. And then you can throw a wave of backs at them. So I was surprised at the success of the Patriots without a real threat of a passing game were having, just running the ball right at the Chargers 7-8 times, 7-8 yards per in the first half. I could only handle the first half. It was 6-0 at halftime, so I watched that part. But in order for them to stop the run, they have to throw numbers. That was the only chance they had. They had to throw numbers. They had to run blitz. They had to take chances. If you're taking chances, and Cortland Sutton and Jerry Jeudy should have big games. I might be able to burn somebody on a screen pass, dump him behind. So for me, they're just not tough. Is kind of what Nick was saying on that one. You know what else isn't tough, Nick? Pizza. I know it's the morning show, but as you start thinking about lunch today, think about making Little Caesars, the official pizza sponsor of the NFL, part of your game day. I'm a vegetarian. I'm still a big eater, so I love being able to order up a double pizza and eat my fill. So order online during our Pizza pregame, 1 hour before and 3 hours after NFL kickoffs, plus all day on Sunday, and get ready for some football and fun. Choose your favorite Little Caesars pizza or pick the toppings you crave. Either way, you win.
Yeah, guys, you got to choose. My favorite Little Caesars is, of course, the crazy bread. I am a carb guy through and through. Maybe it's all the hiking in the backcountry stuff, but some crazy bread with some marinara sauce or any dipping sauce. I'm from the Midwest, so ranch is definitely a delicacy. So always give me ranch. I mean, I have not participated, but I've been to a few ranch chugging contests. That's a sight to behold. But gotta love Little Caesars. There's none directly in the Seattle area, but I'm up and around so much. I'm coming back from a trail in the North Cascades or something. Swing by Little Caesars, of course. And with that, I always win. And speaking of winning, everyone scores with a convenient delivery on our in-store pizza portal pickup. So grab some friends and enjoy a few slices during the games this week.
Pizza from Keith. Yes, appreciate it. And we've got some supers coming in too from Kenny. Appreciate you, Kenneth. KB82 says, what were your thoughts on the fumble that 5 Broncos surrounded but didn't get? Cooper could have fell on it but tried to pick it up and run with it. That's not how I saw it. I saw him going down on it and him squirting right out his armpit, which, then the thing accelerates away from those 5 Broncos, and it was just really unlucky. Mm-hmm. So, I don't think this was I didn't see it that way. I watched it twice. Now I don't remember 100%, and you're making me doubt myself on this one, but I just remember it squirting out from underneath his arm as he was going down to get it. It's just unlucky, man. It is. We talk about the turnover battle. There's one, there's one that could have happened. It makes a change. And we had a question last night, Nick, and I put it in our private chat, while I was producing the Mile High Huddle podcast. We're talking about, why does it seem that some of these factors that have really jumped up and bit the Broncos all happen at once? Where did these all come from? We've been playing such great, clean, disciplined football during this 5-game winning streak. I'm like, no, you really haven't. But the turnovers have been the trump card that have helped you get the dub, and you forget some of the little things that you didn't get, that didn't go your way because you got the W, and it erases those things. Mm-hmm. This was you've been winning close games. This was a close game, but you didn't get the turnovers that tipped the balance in this one. That was kind of how I felt this game went.
That's part of it. I think also part of it is, I'm trying to think back in the game. So you have the Packers game, the Broncos. It was kind of a back and forth game. Obviously we were there, but they got off to a lead. They had control. They were up in front almost the whole game. Then you had the Chiefs at home.
They fell back behind. That's kind of when I started saying, remember, this was the turning point for the Denver Broncos to me, was that Packers game, because you blew a lead again, another halftime lead after you were like 0-10 with halftime leads. You blew a lead again. It would have been real easy at 1-5 to fold up shop and say, we're done. Here we go again. Yeah. But instead, you retook that lead and won the game. That was mental tough. That showed me a lot about this team.
I agree with you, but for the most part, you didn't lose that until late-ish, and then you battled back. the point I'm getting to is the style that you were afforded to play because of the turnovers and the early lead. You had an early lead in the Packers game. You had an early lead in the Bills game. You had an early lead in the Chiefs game that you won. You had an early lead in turnover in that Vikings game. You definitely had an early lead in that Cleveland game as well. In this one, you fell behind. Lickety split. You're down, 10-0 after 3 drives in your first quarter. I mean, it's that one, and that totally changes how this Broncos team can play. And I don't want to, make this a pile on Russell Wilson show, but like the way the offense is built is one where you have a lead and you run the offense through the run game. When you are at a point where you have to play the drop back pass game, not only does it make it harder for Russell Wilson, considering his struggles in the quick game and the volume centric pass game, but it also puts your right tackle, who is still struggling in pass protection, in a bind. When you have a lead, are you running? Are you passing? It's a question mark. When you're down and struggling that bad and you have to play catch up, then it is obvious pass rush. The defenders can pin their ears back. And let's be real, that's just not where the best pathway for Russell Wilson to win. He's not playing football like, Dak Prescott right now, where he's just a maestro in the pocket with the cerebral post-snap stuff. So I think that's a big part of that Broncos 5-game win streak that cannot be overstated. The defense and the offense clicking early and getting a lead and then controlling the flow of the game. The Broncos never had control of the flow of this game.
Which is why I said those 2 big plays in the first half that you didn't get made such a difference, because they changed the way you played the game. Was that drop by Cortland Sutton on a post route that would have probably resulted in points? I think that was long enough that you were in field goal range.
Yes, it was. Yep.
And the Marvin Mims non-pass interference call. Those are both first half plays, both lead to points. You're within a touchdown. It changes the way that you would have played the game. It changes the way that the Houston Texans would have defended you. Those were game-changing plays that you needed. We talked all week about you need the offense to bail out the defense if you're going to be a playoff team. If you're going to win on these streets, you're going to have that. Man, it was there. It was there. And those were the plays we were talking about. It just didn't hit them. It was one of those days where Cortland Sutton drops the ball. He doesn't drop those, man. Doesn't happen. Jonathan Cooper falls on a dead to rights fumble, squirts out his arm. It wasn't your day, and the Houston Texans are a good team. Nick, I had somebody in the comments yesterday, and yes, leave a comment afterwards. If you're watching this afterwards, we get probably 3x the views on YouTube and Facebook after the fact, saying that Scott just doesn't want to give the Houston Texans the credit they deserve. What? And I've been on the Houston Texans bandwagon since the first 3 weeks of the season. What are you talking about, man?
Yeah.
I just said, yeah, that's a take I wasn't really expecting, but it's a take. Houston Texans are good. I was saying that all last week. I've said it all. These were 2 evenly played, even teams that both played a tight game, both had opportunities, both missed opportunities. Houston made more plays. They're a good team. They're absolutely up. I'll say it again. I think D'Amico Ryans and Shane Steichen are going to play the last week of the season for the coach of the year. I'm a big fan of what the Houston Texans are doing.
I think Dan Campbell's still the Vegas odds favorite, considering the Detroit stuff going on. Like with the history of the franchise.
He's in there too. But and then anybody that's is Sirianni going to be in there possibly?
Probably not. Too talented of a roster. That's why Andy Reid never wins it or whatever. Yeah.
Yeah, but you just always have to watch for those, those teams. Their loss hurt them, but if they ended up 15-1, 16-1, 15-2, you have to watch for those guys too, no matter what their roster is. If they're a first-time winner, Andy Reid probably has won 1 or 2 along the way.
Hopefully, if not,
that's the first-time winner. If you go 15-2 and you haven't won it before, they tend to lean that direction. But for me, I go Dan Campbell. That defense. Watch that defense. They could go 500 the rest of the way unless their defense steps up. But Shane Steichen and D'Amico Ryans have engineered 2 of the best turnarounds. And then,
Sean Payton.
Flora at Green Bay. We talked about this yesterday. Who's really done the really good in-season turnarounds? Packers and Rams. Well, McVay ain't going to win it. So watch for Green Bay. And then, again, you get hot. You win the next 5 games. Sean Payton's in there.
Especially considering the narrative around the Broncos offense and Russell Wilson. We talked about last week the Mike Sando piece on The Athletic saying that the Broncos, from a post-snap perspective, are calling a rookie-esque offense with a lot of easy reads. Some of it is, one read to check down, high-low to check down, or even one read and then Russell Wilson take off. We're seeing that a lot in the 2-minute here, which, you know what, you're playing to your quarterback's strengths, and it's for the most part been effective. So not a criticism on either end. You just got to know what you have and maximize it, and that's a sign of a good coach. Hence, coach of the year conversation. Jeremy Sean coming in here saying people were acting like we got smoked on Sunday. We played a good team in their house with a ton of bad bounces and bad calls. It went down to the wire. I was happy with how we battled. I agree with you, Jeremy. I do think for the most part, the ball don't lie in this one. I think Houston was the better team overall, and they probably, if you played this game again, they probably win by more than they did in the end, even though you had some bad calls. I mean, that Samaje Perine forward progress one, that would have been the nail in the coffin. I still don't understand that. When I went back and watched it, I'd have been freaking out if that happened the other way.
You know, and him missing a wide open, CJ Stroud missing a wide open John Mechie at the end of the first half. That one makes it 23-3 game in the first half. That's a walk-in on that. So, it goes both ways. We remember, if only Russell had done this on the final play of the game. Man, I can play that both sides. It's just as fans, we tend to forget about the plays the other team should have had also. We kind of take those for granted that they didn't get them. Like I said, it was a good game between two teams playing really well.
Yeah. I just like going back and having watched the game again and how it played out and just how terrible they were on both sides of the ball in the first half. I feel fortunate to even have had a chance at the end, which points to the resiliency.
Take advantage of those.
Yes.
You hear that all the time. The Broncos should feel fortunate. They're only down by 10 points going into the half after being dominated for the whole thing. And that's when you're dangerous. That's when you're dangerous, when you're playing a good team and you don't put them away when you've got your shots.
And the belief and the coaching job in the second half too. Again, not trying to down talk the Broncos, but they were thoroughly outplayed in that first half, and they battled back and gave themselves a chance. And that's kind of, a microcosm of the entire season as well. Horrible, dreadful, historically bad first half of the season, and belief, coaching, guys, discipline, and doing their jobs. And you chip away and you give yourself a chance. Cuts. Yeah, and hopefully you don't come up just short like in this Houston game. Gary Palmer, 1999, says, good morning, Nick and Scott. Glad to hear some positive feedback. Denver Broncos for life. Go Broncos. Yeah, I mean, positive, negative. I think Scott and I don't really care too much about the perception on that overall. We just want to give you our honest takes of what we see. And if you disagree, great. If not, or if you agree, that's cool too.
Nobody's good. We're not going to agree on. Nick and I disagree all the time. We don't expect you to always agree. That's okay. Let's hear your point of view. I'll listen. If you're respectful of my opinion in the comments, I'll be respectful of yours. I'm not going to tell you I'm right. I'll tell you what I think.
Mm-hmm. Yep, especially when you're projecting, right? It's always hard. You can just do the best, but the future is unwritten. Fallen Sloth, good morning, Broncos country. Seeing the notification while at my desk is exactly what I needed this morning. Hope you're doing well. Fallen Sloth, always great to see you. Colin Wood says the officiating was terrible for both teams. The pass interference, the non-pass interference against Mims that was uncalled, and the Perine fumble they negated were both possible game changers. Yeah, I felt like they were also kind of letting the guys play in pass interference for more or less. I saw a few holds that were not called. If they're going to call it evenly on both sides, I'm not going to have an issue with it as long as it's not putting people in health risk. So I thought that, the reffing wasn't great in this game by any means, but I didn't feel like it was overly one-sided in the end. So not too many criticisms on that.
It was bad. Michael Ronquillo, I want to be clear. I think that hit on Russell Wilson was called.
It was
a personal foul.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Yep. Okay. I was like, for me, that was obvious. I was like,
there was another one later where he got hit pretty good and a shoulder hit him in the face mask. I think it was on the final drive, not the run.
The one I was talking about, that I don't remember that one.
Yeah, it was
the
late.
one I was talking about was the slide, and he's in a 45-degree angle when he got hit, and the guy's coming in with his helmet, coming high. I'm like, you can't. That's too low. You've got to at least, if he had pulled off of him and gone across him, possibly and made contact, I think he would have been okay. But when you bounce a guy off the turf who is sliding, you're done. You have no chance. That flag's coming 100 times out of 100.
Yeah, without a doubt. You got to be a little bit better there. And hopefully the reffing will be better. It's just been feels like a really poor year of officiating. I don't know what's going on.
All around. Well, can you blame them? Who the hell? You wait until you start going to youth sports, dude.
I don't.
You'll see why there aren't any officials, because parents are awful. They're just awful. I was standing there. This guy, it's a 15-year-old girl. He's berating her, and then got kicked out of the game, and then brags about it on the side. Yeah, I said, "What are you, effing stupid?" Well, you obviously are. I was like, I'm going to brain that guy. You can't get these guys. It starts at the youth ranks, right? Well, you can't get any officials to work your way up because no one wants to officiate games anymore. I don't blame them. So volunteer, parents, young folks out there, volunteer to officiate a game for youth, and be respectful of the officials. And our officiating might get better by the time you're older.
Yeah, without a doubt. Well, I mean, gave me anxiety thinking about that, Scott. Hopefully, I don't lose my cool. Keith Brugman
Go high.
says,
That's what I'm an outfield dad. I'm way away from things.
Yeah, that would concern me because, like I said to start the show, I'm a different person when the game is live. Nick and Scott, do me a favor and please fix our third down conversions versus the Texans. 0 third down conversions. Thanks, gentlemen. Yeah, the Broncos go 0 for 11 on third down in this game. It's pretty hard to fathom, honest to God. That is you don't see that very often. So how do the Broncos fix the third down? I think Payton talked about it. It's a lot of the execution in the pass game. It's understanding your reads. It's the right tackle not getting bull rushed, especially early on. Bowles didn't have a great game either. I also think it's doing better on first and second down. Yep. Thanks, Scott. Yes. Whispering it out there for me. But yeah, the Broncos on first and second down in this game, they were dreadful in the pass on first and second down. Negative 0.11 EPA per play on pass. Honestly, I know the Broncos want to run the ball more, but maybe they should have. They were more successful running the ball on early rush, actually had a positive EPA on early rush downs, and they were even worse on late down passing, negative 0.73 EPA per play on that. So really, I mean, how do you get better on third down? You get yourself better opportunities on first and second down, and that is something I do want to get into here with the Broncos team as well. But first, J.R. Capron comes in and says Marvin Harrison Jr. to the Broncos next draft. That ship sailed probably week 7 for the Broncos. You probably had to have a top 3 pick to get Marvin Harrison Jr. Seems like a lot of people are talking like you need a top 2 pick. We'll see how that looks. But he's probably the best overall wide receiver prospect. That doesn't mean he was a guarantee, but a prospect since Calvin Johnson. Maybe you could say AJ Green. That's the next kind of tier there.
Julio was in that class too. He was pretty damn
AJ
good.
Green I just said AJ because he went first, but 4 and 6, I think. But yeah, probably the best wide receiver prospect since Calvin Johnson. Maybe Larry Fitzgerald in that conversation as well at Pitt. He was unbelievable. But yeah, he's unbelievable. No doubt. You're not getting Marvin Harrison Jr. And as much as I love him, it would be malpractice for the Broncos to give up draft picks and players and anything to move up for a wide receiver, considering you're probably picking in the 14 to 20 range right now. I mean, that's a wide variance. 14 to 22. We'll give it 2 and 3 versus 4 and 1 record down the stretch. And it would just be too hard. There's a lot of other wide receivers out there you can still have. They're not Marvin Harrison Jr., but I'd rather have, Keon Coleman plus a defensive tackle rather than, not having a first round pick next year, your third round pick this year, and getting Marvin Harrison Jr.
Yeah. The easy answer for that one, unfortunately, JR, is no way. You're not getting him. And even if you did, you'd probably complain of what it would cost to get him, because that would be a 3 first round draft pick. Not just one. That's a 3 first round draft pick move to get up to 2 or 3 to get him. Even if these 2 quarterbacks go 1-2, okay, you're on the clock. We have a trade in. The Denver Broncos have traded up to number 3, and they have given up Jerry Jeudy, their 2024 first round draft pick, their 2025 first round draft pick, and their 2026 first round draft pick. No, you don't want to hear that.
No. If you're sitting there picking 8 or something, although at that point I like Malik Neighbors enough, I think I'd probably just hold fast and
exactly. And that's kind of my point with the wide receiver position. I'd almost rather have. This is going to sound crazy, possibly. I would almost rather trade out of that spot and give me 5 second-round picks to choose wide receivers. And I feel like it would do better for my team than one Marvin Harrison Jr., because I feel like you can hit on those guys. It's not like I'm not talking about just, pure numbers and probability. I'm talking about there are some really, really good wide receivers in every class that go in the second round.
Mhm.
Michael Pittman, George Pickens. We could go on and on and on and on that I think you're okay getting guys in the second round at wide receiver.
I agree. I mean, obviously, the further you
I
go
know
from
Marvin Harrison Jr. is a different beast, but
yeah, there's something about the relative guarantee. It's still a prospect, so there is no actual guarantee, but it would be unbelievable if he didn't hit. And my point was more so, I think we need to give Malik Neighbors more flowers because I think he is a phenomenal pick. And if he wasn't in a class with Marvin Harrison Jr., I think we'd be talking about him more than we are. But he is so explosive, Scott. I mean, and to create
one of the
explosive.
differences is also, Nick, I knew Calvin, I knew Julio, and I knew AJ since they were sophomores in high school.
Wow.
They were slam dunks.
Yeah.
No question in my mind, from a character perspective, work ethic, family, everything. They passed every single test, no doubt. Like the biggest question, Calvin was a sure thing. He was the surest thing as there will ever be. Biggest question for AJ was he was a little thin. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Then he comes in and he weighs like 210 at the combine. Like, well, he's fine.
Yeah.
Another question was, does Julio really have that top end speed? Does he have the burst and speed? Then he goes in and runs like a 4.32 at the combine. Like, okay, I'm done.
Yeah.
So I don't know Marvin Harrison Jr. quite as well as I knew those other guys because I was in recruiting and different. I don't know those guys. I knew those guys.
Yeah. Well, he's getting great coaching at Ohio State as a wide receiver, and he's obviously got the bloodlines. So he's special. I don't know if I'd trade up for him. We'll have a chance to talk wide receivers here. You probably played yourself out of the top two. I don't know how exactly 3 through 6 will play out, but wide receiver I think is possible for the Broncos with their first round draft pick, considering the questions surrounding Jerry Jeudy. And I think we need to have a Jerry Jeudy at some point as a discussion as well, Scott, at some point, because the frustrations seem like they're out there, and Sean Payton's talking about it as well. And I don't know if you heard Sean Payton's conversation. I think he's a little bit more on the Jerry Jeudy side of frustration than he is on any other side. Just listening to what he has to what he had to say. But Mr. Rocket 199 says, if we don't make the playoffs, could you see us trading up? I think a trade up is certainly possible. If you make the playoffs, trading up is possible. We know that Sean Payton likes trade up. The Broncos traded up twice last season, despite not having excess draft picks. So if there's a guy they like, especially at quarterback, but even not at quarterback, I could see the Broncos doing it. I would advocate against doing that because you are a older roster that's a little top heavy, and you probably need to continue to work on the mid, the second team of your depth chart and develop some guys, especially with Russell Wilson's cap hit about to explode, and whatever that looks like, keeping him or not, that's going to be costly, which means you need to hit on young guys, and more draft picks is better there, but it's certainly possible. Gatorade Gaming comes in, says, do we even have a second? No, you do not. That pick belongs to the New Orleans Saints. And I think there's still a little bit of, it's undetermined which third round pick you're sending to the Saints as well. I think you send the lesser of the third round picks to the Saints. I think that was agreed upon. So we won't know until we know what the draft order is, if Denver is sending their own third round pick or the Dolphins I think the Dolphins third round pick to the Saints.
Yeah,
So
you look at Tankathon right now, and the Broncos only have two of their own two of their own picks. It goes first round, third from the Saints, fourth from the Dolphins, fifth from the Jets, and then fifth for one. But you don't have one of those, so trading up seems ambitious to think of that. Do I want to send a 75 and 131 to get in the second, possibly? But at 14, Tankathon has Jared Verse, edge, as a mock. I'd be pretty happy with Jared Verse as an edge. You kind of shook your head. I'm not sure if you're on the same page. Is that a little too high for him or not?
No, I think that's a good pick. I don't think he is no doubt, blue chip pass rusher, but that's why he's being mocked in the middle of the first round. I think there are 4 edge rushers in this class that are worthy of first round grades. I don't know if any of them are, no doubt, blue chippers, but Dallas Turner from Alabama is probably going to be my number 1. Really, I mean, God, the character, you can just watch him playing like that guy loves ball because he is hunting guys down across the field constantly, and you can see the athlete in the big hits. He's fun.
Jared Verse makes your team better.
Verse, Latu, and Chop Robinson as well. I will be curious what the Broncos' plan is at edge, because they've gone a little bit more hybrid with their current personnel, and that makes them really versatile in what they can do in their pass rush on 3rd and long when they get to 3rd and long. But yeah, it's definitely a group that you could fortify. I think the bigger thing about edge, Scott, it's not about the guys you have on the roster in the immediacy, because I think you could go into next season with a low tier, middling vet to solidify the room, Cooper, Browning, and Benito. That I'd be okay with that. It's not, incredible, but it'd be okay there. There's other issues I'd rather attack. But the edge rusher spot is so important and developmental that if you're taking an edge in the first round in 2024, you are setting yourself up so that way you're not in a position of weakness entering the following offseason, because you have Cooper and Browning will be playing on the last year of their contract next year. So you draft an edge rusher a year before you're in a position where you absolutely need one. So that would be I think the biggest argument for an edge early. But I think everything's on the table as long as there is a prospect that is worthy of the pick range for the Broncos right now. Sorry, folks, probably no stack linebackers or tight ends for the Broncos in this draft, considering they're probably picking in the middle of the first round. KB82 499 says, hypothetical, 4 years from now, who will be more valuable, Marvin Harrison Jr. or Travis Hunter? I think it'll be Marvin Harrison Jr. because I think a truly elite, dominant number 1 wide receiver is more valuable than a truly elite number 1 cornerback. Scott, I know we're going to disagree on this one. The cornerback is harder the cornerback is harder to find a good one, but a game-changing wide receiver, I think, has more impact. I mean, if you take Jamar Chase, A.J. Brown, Tyreek Hill off their teams and you substitute them with, Patrick Surtain, I think those teams are worse overall. I really do think they are worse teams because the wide receiver just has more impact overall on the game. They're easier to find. It's not a scarcity discussion here. It is a overall value and impact. So I think probably I would take Marvin Harrison Jr. We are talking unknowns here because they are draft prospects, but I would take Marvin Harrison Jr. here.
And I just think that Marvin Harrison Jr. is more of a sure thing, a wide receiver, as being a true number 1 than Travis Hunter is as being one of the top 5 corners. Mm-hmm. So that's where I would go on this. And then we can discuss game-changing ability or whatnot. And you won't get too big of an argument from me. You ask me, who are the best football players of all time? The 2 guys that immediately come to mind for me are Jerry Rice is one of them, and then LT, Lawrence Taylor. For me, those are guys that are just cemented in my brain as real quick answers. So no, it's not too big of an argument. Like you said, I think the scarcity is harder to find the shutdown corner. I mean, we can name those guys. You know, talk about generational. We can go back who are legit shutdown corners in the NFL, and we may name 4 guys over the last 15 years. Yep. We can talk about number 1 wide receivers, and we'll hit 30 guys over the last 15 years. But I just think Harrison Jr. is a better prospect.
Yeah, I think if you think about the top 3 wide receivers in a given year versus the top 3 cornerbacks, I think those top 3 wide receivers are more likely to be on a top offense than the top 3 cornerbacks being on a top defense, which to me also, wide receiver is a dependent position. You have to have the quarterback to do that. I'll never forget Randy Moss with the Raiders versus what he was after he traded to the Patriots. But I do think that I probably would take the wide receiver 1, and I think Marvin Harrison Jr. at this point is a better prospect. We'll see about Travis Hunter. Extremely talented. I think he probably needs to pick one position at this point. I don't know what'll happen with Colorado. Stick to a craft, and you can do some gadget stuff here or there, but I don't think it's feasible for him to play, 80 snaps a game and stay healthy and be developing his craft. But extremely talented player in his own right, and will be fun to talk about him a year from now.
So let's start talking playoffs and how we get the Denver Broncos a worse first-round draft pick since we've been talking draft. Let's get the Denver Broncos into the 20s on the path to the playoffs.
Okay, so yeah, the playoff picture, is that what you're going here? Is that the transition?
Scott, okay. That's the title, and we're 40 minutes in. We're figuring we might as well hit on it.
Yes, of course. I didn't know if you're asking who are the draft possibilities that the Broncos make the playoffs. So yes, the Broncos right now, they are definitely in a tough situation when it comes to the NFL draft after losing to the Houston Texans. It is unfortunate because if they had won, they would be, I don't want to say guaranteed in, but I think your playoff probability would be about 73%, considering your fortunes this last weekend, where the Browns lost, the Steelers lost their quarterback as well. Here comes Mitchell Trubisky. And I think the Chiefs lost. You'd only be one game back in the AFC West, Scott. I mean, my God, talk about a talk about a chance. You'd have a chance. Colts barely won that one as well. So yeah, the Broncos would be extremely fight. Jags lost. Also, you'd have a chance to even talk about, moving up there if the Jags get jumped by the Texans. But yeah, the Broncos are in a rough situation right now just because they have to play nearly flawless down the stretch. So again, shout out to Zach Seegers, he's been messing around with the playoff simulator here with the probabilities on it. And according to the New York Times playoff model and simulating the games, the Broncos getting 10 wins should be enough to make the playoffs. If you only win 3 of your next 2, getting you to 9, it's over. But 10 wins for the next one, you pretty much get in almost every time. So we'll see how that plays out.
Thank Arizona Cardinals for that.
Yes. Thank you, Arizona Cardinals. Thank you to the Los Angeles Rams as well. Broncos on the head-to-head versus Cleveland.
Rams are playing well, man.
Yep.
Just to put a bow on the conversation from Kenny coming back in with a super stat, he says, I'll take Travis Hunter because he's a dual threat. He won't play offense as much in college, but he will definitely play offense, scoring 4 TDs a year. He's talking about probably in the pros. See, and that's where I disagree, Kenny, is he's not going to be a dual threat in 4 years. And that was how you started the question. 4 years from now, who will be the more valuable player? 4 years from now, Travis Hunter will not be playing both sides of the ball. So
except gadget, I think it'll probably be there'll probably be tiny
maybe.
usage.
And I'd say maybe special teams, but guys just don't play 2 ways. They just don't. Who's the last guy that did? I mean, it's rare in college, and I can't even think of guys. I'm sure there are. So put them in there to list the exception that proves the rule. But in 4 years, he's not going to be a contributor on both sides of the ball.
Yeah, I just don't think it's smart for his player health at that point.
It's too much.
Yeah, it's all the hits and stuff. I think you probably stick him at cornerback, and he's going to be fantastic there. Colorado needs him on both sides. If only he could play offensive and defensive line for them. But that's we'll see with Travis Hunter. It's more of a known quantity or quality right now with Marvin Harrison. But Travis Hunter's great, and I'm excited to talk about him next year. Back to the record here. The Broncos, they finished 4-1 down the stretch and lose only to the Lions, which I think is probably the only game down the stretch here where you'll be dogs, Scott. Maybe they'll be dogs on the road versus the Chargers or Raiders, but I think that's probably a pick 'em game.
How some of the other games go.
Yes. Yeah, exactly. But those are probably going to be pick 'em games within 2 points if the Broncos aren't favored in that one, or 1.5. So the Broncos, if they go 4-1 and lose to the Lions, they have a 75% chance of making the playoffs, which stinks because you still don't have control, but we'll see how it plays out down the stretch. Browns, Steelers, not looking so hot. Colts have some games where they could lose as well, even though it's pretty easy. Broncos going 4-1 though, and losing against the any of the other AFC teams that they play drops them to 66% chance. So that AFC versus NFC matters, and the AFC conference record does come into play. If you lose another AFC game, it's detrimental in that. Doesn't matter if it's the Patriots, Raiders, or Chargers. Losing any of those games drops the Broncos' playoff probability to 66, assuming they go 41%. Otherwise, if the Broncos go 5-0 down the stretch, Scott, they have a 99.9% chance of making the playoffs. So there is still a chance out there where if they go 5-0, they don't make it. But I think that results in every single team above them going 5-0. So that's statistically, we talk about the turnover run being improbable. Well, this is even more improbable. So that won't happen. The Broncos also still do have a chance if they finish 3-2. There's a 5% probability if they go 3-2 with one of those losses having to come against the Lions. If it's 2 AFC losses, it's over. But if you lose one against the AFC and one against Detroit, you have a 5% chance still. So there is a chance, but really you got to go 4-1, and really you probably got to go 4-1 with that loss coming against the Lions.
5-0, I'll take my chances, Nick. Let's just put in the 5-0 and see what happens on that one. There are some significant games this week. I mean, you can look at Patriots at Steelers. Okay, yeah, that one matters. Anytime one of these teams is playing, it's important, obviously, especially if they lose it, right? Arizona and Pittsburgh. But there's a few significant games to watch this weekend. Colts at Bengals. Bengals are in this thing all of a sudden. The Colts are sitting there at 7-5 with the 7 spot. Those two, that's a playoff-ish game right there. All of a sudden, the Jaguars at Browns becomes real interesting. Now, you probably want the Jaguars to win that game and go ahead and knock the Browns out. But if the Browns were to win that game and move to 8-5, all of a sudden the Jaguars are 8-5. I think you probably want Jacksonville to win that game and knock the Cleveland Browns down to 7-6. And then finally, Bills and Chiefs all of a sudden are getting really interesting as well. I don't think you can root for the Chiefs, but that one become the outcome of that game, because it's not just the teams ahead of you. You got to watch the teams that are behind you as well. And if
Bills.
You're looking at the Buffalo Bills at 6-6, the Cincinnati Bengals at 6-6, they're right there also. So those are some games that are going to be scoreboard watchers this weekend for sure.
And really probably just got to keep taking care of your own business at the end of the day. And we'll see how it plays out, right? You gave yourself almost no margin for error. You had a gift this week with the Browns and the Steelers losing. It's really too bad the Titans couldn't pull that one out, Scott. Otherwise, you'd probably almost be no difference other than you drop to the Texans, and then you'd be big Texans fans down the stretch. But that's
Week 15. You got Steelers and Colts.
Yep, that should play itself out. You got Texans playing Colts as well. Atlanta's going to play the Colts. Hopefully they'll let's go Falcons. Dirty Birds. Hopefully they win that one. But you got a chance for sure. And the odds are still there. I do want to say, though, Scott, I think what would you say the over-under is down the stretch here for the Broncos? If you had to pick the record for these final 5 games, because we've said it off air before, and I guess I'll just put my name on it. I think they probably go 3-2. And I think it's a very good season, and you come up just short.
I think 3-2 sounds about right. The thing is, I'll probably pick, if you were to say pick a winner in each one of these games, I'd probably go 4-1. Just like the only one I feel like they'll be, like you said, dogs in is Detroit. But just like we said with Houston, you just can't keep winning the close games. Like, okay, I got a 55% chance of winning. That means I'm going to be favored. I think you'll win each one of these games. But then the probability of winning each of those games is 0.55 times 0.55 times 0.55, and it ends up being about 8%. So I think 3-2 probably sounds about right.
Which is going to be unfortunate, and we're going to kick ourselves about how the absolute heck did you lose to the Raiders at home when they were, Josh McDaniel
Raiders. Now they're going to be more of a problem.
Yep. You also lost a game that you definitely should have won versus the Commanders. You had to talk about the game flow and understand where you are. You had a good lead in that one. I remember checking in on that game after I just got back from climbing Half Dome. Like, oh man, the Broncos are up, it was 17-3 or something. It was great, and fell apart, unfortunately, in that one. And of course, losing at home to Zach Wilson and Nathaniel Hackett. Oh, how? I mean,
that's when I was done. That's when I was scorched earth after that game, y'all.
Yeah.
That's when I was like, burn it all down. Find the trade deadline's coming up. Get what you can. Burn it all down. I was in a dark place, Nick.
21-3 for that Washington Commanders game. How do you lose that?
You don't lose that game again.
No, right now you would not.
The Commanders offense is good.
Yeah.
But the Denver Broncos defense would shut them down now, or at least limit them to about half of what you gave up, and you'd be able to score points. You don't lose that game now. You lost it in week 2.
It's almost too bad. I mean, I know the Broncos went on an improbable win streak, but some of those lesser opponents, the fact that you got them early when it was a new coaching staff and you're trying to figure it out.
But we knew that, man. We knew that looking at the schedule. You've got to win these games here, or it's going to be really hard down the stretch.
Yeah. Yep, absolutely. So it was pretty hard to do that. But you still have a chance, without a doubt. And one thing I did want to touch on, Scott, I mentioned it before the show, but first let's get into our guy Rattlesnake Master coming in and saying, I know it's early, but would love to see a mock draft soon. Much love from Nebraska. Maybe we'll toss one out here before the end of the show, or maybe we'll do something Thursday.
Do one on Fridays too. So Rattlesnake Master, make sure follow youtube.com/Scott Kennedy. Make sure you're subscribed to that channel, because Nick and I do a Friday NFL show on Friday mornings. We talked draft all last week. We'll go through someone else's mock draft again this week, do some more playoff scenarios for the rest of the NFL. But make sure you're subscribed, youtube.com/Scott Kennedy, because that's where we start doing all-encompassing NFL. That way Ernie doesn't get mad at us.
I mean, heck, maybe we will do our own mock, Scott. We haven't done a single simulator this year. Maybe we can do a top 10 or something. But yeah, for right now, the Broncos, I think you could go almost any direction with the draft, assuming there is a player that is worthy of the selection. I'm sorry, folks. I do not know if there is a no doubt linebacker or tight end. And I think right now on paper, the Broncos' biggest like immediate need is probably the tight end. I see Taylor Made talking about tight end being a huge need for the Broncos. It is. It sounds like Ertz is probably heading back to Philly. From what I've heard over the last 24 hours, doesn't seem like Denver is in the cards. It sounds like more likely they are depending on Dulcich. So we'll see how, not depending, but if they're getting anything from the tight end in the receiving game, it's Dulcich coming back healthy, which has not happened really. But yeah, I think Broncos, you're talking Denver right now, you're looking picks 16 through 22. You're probably looking at cornerback, edge rusher, wide receiver. I think that would probably be the most likely trio of spots. I can't think of quarterback also.
There you go.
Quarterback is so hard. It's almost like the quarterback conversation has to be in its own box because it's such a different process overall. Yeah. And we also still
don't know who's going to be there.
That is the big one, right? JJ McCarthy coming out. He'd probably be close to that range. I think you're out of range for sure of Caleb Williams and Drake May. Jaden Daniels, it sounds like he's the recent pickup from the NFL is that Jaden Daniels is going top 10. I mean, he might even go top 4, top 5. He's moving up there a lot. And it sounds like people really love the mental makeup of that kid too. He's so skinny, but he's moving up. So let's say Jaden Daniels is out as well. Okay, well then who? Scott? Quinn Ewers said he's going back. We'll see if that does play out, depending on how Texas does. Bo Nix, no thanks. He's probably a round 3 quarterback for me. I know PFF had him in the top 10 in a couple mocks, but I disagree. Michael Penix is going to be 25 years old, has a weird throwing motion, and has had multiple injuries. I think he's probably another day 2 guy. Carson Beck from Georgia is probably returning. I just don't really know what happens with the quarterbacks in this draft after the top 3. I think the top 3 I feel really good and solidified about. We'll see what happens with Beck, McCarthy, Penix, Nix, Pratt. I think Pratt also deserves a shout out from Tulane. I really like him. But again, more of a day 2 guy. So quarterbacks up there. So I'd probably put edge, given the players that are available, edge, wide receiver, cornerback. I would love a defensive tackle. I don't see one in this class outside of Newton. And I don't love Newton top 10, but where Broncos are going to be picking, I think that's the range he should go. So those are the spots I'm looking at right now.
There's again, we'll get down to best player available and we'll start talking about that. And it becomes in tiers. You want to try and have best player available meet a need. And the lower you are in the draft, the easier that is to do because there's just not that much of a difference between the 15th and the 35th guy a lot of times. Michael comes as Nick and Scott, would you want a winning season or NFL playoffs for the Broncos? It's an interesting question.
Hand in hand.
What was the worst team that made it? Was it a 7-10? It wasn't a 7-10 team. Was it a 7-9 made the playoffs? And then I think one. Wasn't the Seahawks that did that?
Yep, the Beastquake.
Going back to, the discussion, yes, you could go 11-6, and there's a slight chance you would miss the playoffs. I would rather go 5-0, finish the season 11-6, and miss the playoffs than I would go 9-8 and eke in as a 7. I probably would because I know my team was legit. I know my team was legit and heading in the right direction as opposed and know that I just got hamstrung by a bad start, but I won 11 of my last 12 games. I'm as good as anybody in the NFL. Unfortunately, because I stubbed my toe, I didn't get a chance to show it, but by God, wait till freaking next year. And I can start talking some guys into doing some restructures so I can go get some more help in free agency. As opposed to 8-9, because you said, would you rather have a winning record? You go 2-3 down the stretch and finish 8-9, your team still isn't very good. It's still not where you want it to be. Man, I'd rather have my team be where it is. That's where I would go. Now, 9-8 and 8-9, there's not much of a difference. I'll take the playoffs. But 11-6 and miss out, give me that all day.
Yeah. Yeah, without a doubt. It is would be a lot of fun, and would be a lot of upset for me. I'd be pretty upset to have that slow start keep you out from the playoffs when there are 7 seeds and you go 11-6. And if 11-6 seed doesn't, or 11-6 team doesn't make the playoffs, Scott, I think we need to kick it back to our conversation yesterday about the NFC versus the AFC, because
we would. We definitely would.
Unbelievable.
But don't they need some playoff experience to learn? You're in the playoffs right now, dude. Jeremy, I believe that. That was a playoff atmosphere. That was a playoff type game. That's where I would go on that one. So I think the way you've put yourself now, each game matters.
Yep.
And it would feel like playoff experience. And again, if you're a team that's able to win 11 of 12, I'll take that. I'll take that.
Yeah. Without a doubt. And you're in a playoffs now. That's a great call, Scott. One final thing I want to touch on here. It's not all doom and gloom from this Houston game, of course. And the whole team, there's plenty of, crap on everyone's hands following how bad they were in the first half. But I did want to give a shout out to something that I've been very tough on. And I gave him a shout out yesterday and wanted to do it again today. But the defensive line specifically, I think, had their single best game of the season in run defense. In this game, specifically in the second half, Scott, the Broncos were consistently getting 3rd and longs because they were doing so well on 1st and 2nd down. According to PFF grades, best single run defense game of the season from Mike Purcell, best single run defense game of the season from Jonathan Harris, 2nd best run defense game of the season from Zach Allen, while still notching 4 pressures. Zach Allen's been unbelievable.
Zach Allen's becoming the guy that you paid for.
I mean, he might even be more than the guy that you paid for, considering what he's been doing here recently. But those guys played great. Also did want to give a shout out to Browning and Cooper. I think they each notched top 3 run defense grades from the season in this game. Now, yes, Houston is not a very good run team, but I think it still matters because the Broncos have gone up against a lot of not good run teams, and they've made them look amazing this season. Thinking about the Vikings, they came in as one of the worst 4 rushing offenses in the league, and they just diced the Broncos up on the ground. Broncos did an awesome job in this game, stalling the Texans on 1st and 2nd down in the run game and getting to 3rd and long. And Scott, I just wanted to show this clip here because I've said it on here. You got to eat your veggies to get to dessert, and that is so true.
How can you have any pudding if you don't eat your meat?
Gotta love some Pink Floyd. That's a good time. But here's a look from the Broncos. This is a 3rd and 13 play here. Scott, and the Broncos are obviously lined up in a rather exotic look because you got on 3rd and 13. Who do we see here for those listening at home? You got Zach Allen listed on the far left, Nick Benito then. You have double mug linebackers over the A-gaps. That's the mug guys there, 49 and 41, so Singleton and Sanders. Then you got Browning over the left tackle, Cooper way out wide, and then PJ Locke lined up just
isn't 3rd and long fun?
3rd and long is so fun.
You can do this kind of stuff when you get 3rd and long. It's fun.
It is. And Scott, which players on this screen do you think drop?
I would probably drop. I feel like I remember this play, and I feel like Benito dropped. I would probably drop Singleton and Browning.
Scott, this is a 4-man pressure coming, and every single player shown here closest to the ball drops into coverage. 42, 49, 41, and 56 all drop into space, and you have shown on the screen PJ Locke, Cooper, Zach Allen, and not shown on the screen here, Jaquan McMillan coming up from the slot on the far left side of the screen, coming up with the strip sack. This is the strip sack play.
He chases him down, and he's rolling left on this one.
Yep, and you have 3 Texans offensive linemen blocking Cooper on this play. You have a help on one guy on Locke. You have 2 guys on Allen, and then the tight end here on the far left side of the screen has absolutely no idea what's going on, and by the time he knows where the pressure is coming from, McMillan's past him. So the Broncos, I wanted to give credit on this one. They've been pretty poor this season, Scott, on getting pressure with 4 guys. I think they are 27th in EPA per play, sending 4. So that's something we need to talk about and look at this offseason, because
which is why Jared Verse makes this team better.
Yes, another pass rusher.
You've really got 3 edges right now, and that would give you a legit 4.
Yes, I agree with you there. Maybe somebody on the interior too who can do a little bit more with Allen from the one technique spot. That's another discussion. But Broncos need to be better with rushing 4. But if you can be good enough on run defense on first and second down and get to 3rd and 7 plus, you can get these looks like this. And I've been so impressed. The Broncos, we haven't had a chance to really see this even during the stretch because the Broncos have been so bad against the run that you're constantly 3rd and 2, 3rd and 3. You're not able to drop your 4 guys closest to the ball on 3rd and 2 because if it's a draw, oh, good luck, buddy.
This is a 7v7 lineup.
Yes, this is beautiful. You are only getting here on 3rd and longs. The Broncos have done it the last 2 weeks. Scott, on the run defense, has finally gotten there. We've started to see a little bit more exotics. And I think that deserves a shout out. I'll say it again on here. You cannot eat your dessert unless you eat your veggies. Broncos doing enough on first and second down. Coming into this game, their run defense, when you excluded turnovers, when the Broncos have been good on defense, quote unquote, since week 6, they were the 4th worst EPA per rush defense in the NFL and the 2nd worst success rate rush defense in the NFL, excluding turnovers. So that is a big difference here. They were better this week. I think they were 9th and 10th. So only, solid to average considering there's bye weeks, but it made such a difference in what the Broncos were able to do in the pass rush department. So some food for thought. I just thought it was worth shouting out the run defense in this game and showing that we can have some fun with the exotics and pressures, but again, you got to do the work on first and second down to get there. And those are, I think, a key area for the Broncos to target this offseason because plays like this, looks like this, the PJ Lock one last week, we had a PJ Lock one and this one, also a simulated pressure, creeper, whatever you want to call it, zone blitz, fake blitz, because this is rushing 4 when you're showing rushing 7, right? That's so much fun. So got to do good enough on first and second down. Just thought this play itself was worth highlighting without actually showing the play so YouTube doesn't come for us.
Yeah. Gar says, anyone know the time of position difference in last Sunday's game? It was 33-27. So you can call that a 6-minute edge. You could call it a 3-minute edge because if you switch 3, then they're even. It +1 ends up being double. So it was 33-27 overall.
Yeah. Broncos, the first half was really bad, and we talked about it, Scott. The missed from Cortland Sutton, the drop, the non-call PI. I also think you gave up 2
changes. Those changed the game.
Yep, I do think
it changed how you could run your offense and in game plan, and it changed how you would have been defensed. We talk about you weren't able to run, play action, take shots. You can if you get points on those 2 drives, which you didn't do.
Yeah,
those were big turning points in this game, in my opinion.
I did also want to shout out, it was unfortunate. Scott, what was the one thing I said coming into this Houston game that you cannot do if you're going to win this game?
Give up big plays.
Explosive pass plays. You gave up 2 50-yarders in that first half. 50-yard pass. I mean, a 20-plus yarder is considered
more. There were two big missed opportunities from on their end as well.
Yes. But, I mean, an explosive pass by statistical definition is 20-plus yards. You're talking 50. I mean, that's rare air. And to give up 2 1/2, completely flipped the field position, made it really hard. I think the Texans end up scoring on both of those. You could not lose the explosive passes. So those are 2 that were missed opportunities as well in the first half. And then the Alex Singleton one where I think you just got to know the situation better. They're going to kick a field goal. You won as a defense there, stalling them out and not giving up a touchdown because they had the false start.
Yeah, they would have kicked a field goal because it would have made it 4th and 7. They would have brought their kicking team out.
Unless they're crazy. I think that'd have been unbelievable. They went for it there. But you got to know the situation there. I get it's competitive stuff, but that's some missed opportunities there in the first half. You still had a chance. We got Michael coming in here to wrap up the show, unless anything comes last second here. Michael says, great show today. Nick and Scott on Broncos for breakfast. Go Broncos. Go Michael. Thank you so much for the double super chat today. We really appreciate everybody coming in. A fun topic, of course. Broncos still very much got a chance, but they need to keep it going here, and hopefully they'll get a lot get the turnover luck back in their side. It's not just pure luck, obviously, because you got to make it, but the rate at which it was happening, and especially fumbles, Scott, I think there's a little bit more luck in that. I think there's been studies shown that interceptions are less volatile and luck-oriented than fumbles.
Pressure leads to interceptions, and you're having trouble getting pressure. You increase the pressure, you increase all of it. Getting pressure on the quarterback goes hand in hand with creating turnovers.
Yeah. Coverage plays into pass rush, and pass rush plays into coverage. It's a positive feedback loop there, Scott, for a little science term for you. But Scott, good show today. Any final thoughts before we get out of here? We didn't have any pizzas this week, unfortunately, from the Broncos. As soon as we get the Caesars read again, we can't lean into it. But final thoughts on the Broncos playoff chances, draft, this Texans game, putting a bow on it. What's going on?
No, we're the second week of December, and you still have your destiny in your own hands. That's a good thing. Yeah. There are teams. It's going to be a slugfest because every time you think, okay, yay, the Steelers and Browns lost. Well, hell, the Cincinnati Bengals just upset the Jaguars. So there's going to be a lot of scoreboard watching going on. We highlighted a few of the games to keep an eye on this weekend. That's going to be fun. It's going to be fun. It's a hell of a lot better. Yeah, I love talking draft. It's kind of what I do. But this is more fun for this show right now to talk playoff possibilities and all those type things. And you're in it. You're absolutely in it. This was a setback. It was not a nail in the coffin.
Yep. Was not, but we'll see. A lot of range and outcomes still available with 5 games to go. We'll see what happens with Russell Wilson down the stretch, and we'll see what happens to the Broncos. Playoffs or draft, who knows? They sit there at 14, the 14th pick. You'd have a chance at not a blue chipper there, but a talented player. Maybe they trade back. Who knows? We have a lot of time to talk about it. Thanks, everybody, coming in. Make sure you're following Scott and I on Twitter. Scott is at Scout Kennedy. I am at Nick Kendell MHH. Also follow us at Mile High Huddle and BFB_pod. If you haven't done so yet, join on Facebook, facebook.com/Mile High Huddle and facebook.com/Mile High Huddle pod. And as the ticker says here underneath, please subscribe, like, and share over on YouTube. Does us a heck of a lot of good. If you do that, you don't have to be a super chat, superstar, anything like that. Although, of course, we prefer that if you would. Thank you to those who did. But if you can't do that, again, subscribe to Mile High Huddle, share it to your stuff, like us, help that algorithm, comment on here after the fact, comment on wherever, go to iTunes, leave us a review. Always appreciate that. Want to shout out to our superstar folks in here today. Michael Ronquillo, a 2-timer. Thank you so much.
3 times. You had the hat trick today, Michael. Thank you, my friend.
Man, next time we're going for the golden sombrero. Michael, thank you so much. Miguel Santa Steven, of course, Troy Boer in the house, Kenneth Booker, Gary Palmer, Mr. Rocket, KB82. Some fun Colorado talk here from KB with Travis Hunter, good player. Rattlesnake Master, of course. You guys killed it today. Appreciate everyone
as well.
Yeah. Yep. Awesome. Thanks, guys, so much. We appreciate it. Scott and I will be back tomorrow morning to cover the Falcons on his channel, and obviously probably always devolve into some draft stuff. Always, because it's fun. And I'll be back again tonight because I don't have a baby class. So it'll be Carl and I on building the Broncos. So a lot of fun. I actually do have a baby class, Scott, but it's 6:30. So it's after building the Broncos. So should be a lot of fun. Make sure you guys always choose kindness and compassion. Michael Ronquillo, is this the hat trick? Is this the golden sombrero?
That's the golden sombrero you were calling for. That's the 4 shot.
Amazing. God, Michael, thank you so much. Thanks, everyone. Have a great rest of your day. Continue to choose kindness and compassion. And as always, go Broncos.